So I want to talk about 5 things today. I want to start out by talking about tablets, kind of their usefulness, where I see them in the market. Second, I want to talk about iOS and Android, how the two stack up. Third, I want to get into the current state of Android tablets, the competition between ASUS, Samsung, so on and so forth. Next, I want to talk about ASUS's product line in particular and just how aggressive they are and the kinds of things that they're actually working on. And then finally, I want to talk about the future of Android tablets. I want to talk about Kal-El, what to expect over the next 6 months, 12 months, so on and so forth. So let's get started with tablets in general. Now, I know everyone looks at tablets and says, hey, these are consumption-only devices. But my biggest issue, and I agree with that, my biggest issue with tablets is, let's say I'm at my desk or I'm on my notebook and I'm in productivity mode. So I'm typing away, I'm working on something. Now, in the background, I might be browsing the web, right? I might be goofing off. And before you know it, hey, all I'm doing is browsing the web. And now I'm no longer on the best device for browsing the web. I agree, tablets are definitely the best device for a kind of intimate web browsing. You know, laying back on the couch, the screen's really close to you. You get to kind of relax and interact with web pages the way you want to. So what do you do in the situation that I just described, though, where you're working, then you decide that, hey, you're just browsing Reddit, so maybe you need to switch over to a tablet. Currently, the only way to kind of move your state from your notebook or desktop over to your tablet is to open up an email yourself, the 10 or so links you've got open in tabs, go to your tablet, open up those 10 links and continue browsing there. That's a horribly inefficient way to move between devices. And ultimately, I believe that's a big gate to, mass adoption of tablets or mass adoption of any of these devices, simply because switching state or carrying state with you from your desktop to your smartphone to your tablet and back and vice versa, I believe that that's the next major transition that we need to make in tablets. It's unfortunate that HP kind of abandoned its plans with WebOS, because if you look at touch to share, if you look at a lot of what it was planning to do with the touchpad, with the Pre 3, with the Veer, it seemed like HP really got the whole synergy aspect of things. That you needed to be able to quickly move state between these devices, that it's not enough to assume that everyone's just going to have one device, but hey, they might have multiple of these types of devices and they might want to move state between them. I feel like Google, Apple, Microsoft, all of these guys have to get on that bandwagon. And at some point, that's kind of the next big hurdle in the tablet or smartphone OS revolution. Prior to that, the first major hurdle was, hey, you just need apps. You need an app store. You need a way of people doing things above and beyond just browsing the web and checking email. We've pretty much got that, right? You're going to see more expansion there. You're going to see more killer apps. But what's next, right? Once people get the apps in there, once they've got everything they want from a software standpoint, obviously you keep revving the hardware, but what's the next major thing or step in the evolution of tablets? And I believe synergy between desktops and smartphones and notebooks. I think that's the next major step there. Unfortunately, no one's really done that well thus far. And as a result, you have this kind of discrete computing model where you're doing work, you need to be on a notebook. You need to play, browse the web, just read emails, hop over to your tablet. You need to write emails. Well, you can do short ones on your tablet, but you need to do longer ones. You need to go back to your desktop and notebook. Ultimately, I feel like that combined with the relatively high price tag for tablets, even $500, that's a lot of money for something that has very, very discrete usage models. I think the two of those ultimately gates tablet adoption at this point. Now, I believe both of those will be addressed, and today we're going to look at one option of addressing at least some of the productivity argument from ASUS here with the ePad slider, but we'll get to that in a moment. So now what about the landscape? What about iOS versus Android? Personally, I tend to use Honeycomb-based tablets more than the iPad, and part of that is due to the fact that there's just more Honeycomb tablets and I have to review them, so that just happens. The second thing, though, and I've talked to Brian Klug, our senior smartphone editor, and we've kind of agreed on this as well. It feels like if you use an iPhone regularly, the iPad doesn't really offer much of a different experience. It's a larger screen, it's a more comfortable experience for sure. Whereas the kind of iOS or iPhone plus Honeycomb tablet, I feel like you're getting a little bit more or a little bit more variety or something a little bit different with the Honeycomb tablet. But I kind of view it like this. Android in general, Honeycomb in general, you get more of a computing experience. You get more of a PC-like experience. Whereas iOS, the iPad, the iPhone, you get more of an appliance experience. And that's really personal preference. You just like Mac versus PC, you can functionally do both, do everything with either device, and it just boils down to personal preference, which you feel more comfortable with. Obviously, Honeycomb has improved tremendously since its debut earlier this year. The software is more robust, everything's just a lot faster, compatibility is a lot better. If you look at available apps, even that's improved tremendously. And from that perspective, Honeycomb, I believe, is a viable alternative to iOS on the tablet side. But I actually don't believe that many people cross-shop between the iPad or a Honeycomb tablet. I fundamentally believe you either want one or the other. And I think for the users who are just looking for web browsing, email, IM, stuff like that, RSS reading, stuff like that, I feel like both platforms are equally capable. Where iOS has an advantage is if you look at the app catalog, obviously developers seem to have flocked towards the iOS App Store more than they have Android Market, and you do get a slightly larger variety of apps over on the Apple side of things. That being said, if this is your only computing device, you do give up Flash in the web browser. And, like Flash or not, that's actually a big limitation. If this is going to be the only computer you take with you, there are a number of situations. You're trying to make a reservation on a restaurant's website. You're trying to browse a car manufacturer's website. A lot of these folks are still Flash only with no HTML5 fallback. And again, if this is your only device, well, maybe Honeycomb makes sense because you actually do get Flash there. Performance isn't awesome, but it's definitely reasonable, and you can usually get things done on websites that are Flash only. So it's a trade-off either way. In terms of performance, from an overall OS UI standpoint, Apple definitely has a greater amount of polish there. Part of that has to do with hardware decisions. A lot of that has to do with just sheer optimization in what Apple's done in iOS. UI frame rate is a top priority there. Whereas it's becoming a top priority in Android, but it's not as much of a first-class citizen. GPU performance obviously is an iOS advantage. The PowerVR SGX 543 MP2 that's used in the iPad 2 is still the fastest GPU in an SoC used in a tablet or smartphone on the market today. The good news for Android is there still aren't that many compelling 3D titles on either platform that can really harness that power. But over the next couple of years, I think we'll see that change. CPU performance is generally comparable. Apple is using a dual-core Cortex A9, and all of the majority of the Honeycomb tablets on the market today are all Tegra 2 based, which is again dual-core Cortex A9. There's some slight advantages on the Apple hardware side, but overall, both are equally capable. And again, it really boils down to personal preference. One of the things that I like to see, and this gets into the ASUS part of the discussion, is that a number of Honeycomb manufacturers are kind of starting to compete based on price. Entry level for the iPad 2 is $499. ASUS introduced the ePad Transformer, where you get the tablet alone for $399. And I think that's the right way to go. I think if we've learned anything from the Kindle Fire or the Touchpad Fire sale, it's that there's a huge market for non-iPad tablets, but $500 is kind of a steep entry fee. A number of people are willing to pay it, but tons of people are willing to pay it if that entry fee goes down to, let's say, $199 or maybe even $299. And I'm hoping to see more manufacturers go that route. Bringing us to the Honeycomb part of the discussion, the main players in the space today are at least Samsung and ASUS. Now, that's kind of interesting because Samsung really comes from a CE background and ASUS obviously from a PC background. But in my opinion, those are the two forerunners in the Android tablet space. You've had a lot of folks, Lenovo, Toshiba, LG, all these folks are kind of competing in the space, but they've either not innovated enough or not done anything to really further the form factor, whereas these two have. Samsung, obviously, that's the only option if you want something that is as thin as possible. The Galaxy Tab 10.1, it's an incredibly comfortable device to use. It's super thin. We've reviewed it on the site several times, both in the standard Wi-Fi and 4G LTE feature options. And we're working on the Galaxy Tab 8.9 review now, which is an even smaller form factor, but you don't make any sacrifices in terms of performance or resolution. So if you want small form factor, you go Samsung. The problem with Samsung is its price points. They're equivalent to Apple's, which, as I just mentioned, I think a number of users, myself included, feel that $499 or above is just it's too steep for a tablet. For a lot of us, these are secondary or tertiary devices in our computing life, and as such, dropping another $500 every couple of years, in addition to all the upgrades we normally do, that is a bit of a tall order. On the other side of the fence, whereas Samsung's kind of going direct head-to-head with the iPad 2, ASUS is looking to innovate in different ways. So we got the ePad Transformer, and here it is with the dock attached. And this is basically for the users who want a notebook replacement, but they can't deal with typing a lot of words on the tablet's virtual keyboard. The issue isn't necessarily the virtual keyboard, but it's the ergonomics of a tablet, right? So whereas on a notebook, you just kind of type on this plane and look straight ahead and you see what you're typing. On a tablet, you have to both type and look on the same horizontal plane, which ends up with you in kind of this position if you're lucky and you're at a desk. And if you're lying down, it's just an extremely uncomfortable thing to do for long periods at a time. So the iPad Transformer, as I mentioned before, was nice because it dropped price points to $399. Obviously, if you wanted to add the Transformer dock, which is this and it's optional, that bumped up price by about another $150. But what you got with that was a full-blown keyboard, a trackpad, and another 25 watt-hour battery. So you actually got the best battery life of any ARM-based tablet we've reviewed thus far. I think we measured the original iPad Transformer Plus dock at over 15 hours in our general use test, beating the iPad 2 even, and obviously more than double, or at least double most of the Honeycomb tablets we'd reviewed at that point. Now, the problem with the Transformer is it's kind of bulky. If you close it, it's kind of like a chunky netbook. It's a stylistic device. It looks cool, and it's still better than like carrying around a 15-inch notebook, but it's definitely not ideal in terms of form factor. And for folks who want the flexibility of a keyboard, but don't want to have to carry around another piece or make the decision of, well, do I want the tablet plus dock or just the dock? ASUS has another option, and it's called the ePad slider. As its name implies, this is the ePad slider right here, it's got a sliding keyboard. This isn't like the kind of sliding keyboard you get with a smartphone. So on a smartphone, you push up on the screen to reveal a keyboard. Here, you actually lift up on the screen, and it's kind of spring-loaded, and you get a screen keyboard split of about 45 degrees. This actually works even better for the touchscreen plus keyboard dichotomy than the iPad Transformer, because whereas here you've got this kind of 90-degree separation between your keyboard and your touch surface, the 45-degree separation brings your hands closer to the screen itself, so it's a lot more natural to interact with the touchscreen while you're typing away. And that's the best way to describe this. It's a very natural computing experience with the slider. If you're in kind of normal tablet mode, you get all of the benefits that you would of a tablet. It's just great, super comfortable, super relaxed to browse the web on or read emails. But unlike the Transformer, unlike the iPad, unlike the Galaxy Tab, when you're in a situation where, let's say you're reading an email and, hey, something super urgent just came in, you've got to draft a huge response, you no longer have to kind of sigh and type out this massive essay on a virtual keyboard, nor do you have to go get your dock or go to your laptop. You just slide open the keyboard. And the keyboard serves, as you can see here, as an excellent stand. And it really addresses that issue with tablets very well. Honestly, I don't know of a better way to address that problem. Apple tried with its smart covers, where you kind of fold the cover over and you've got a bit of a stand. But even that, the stand isn't super comfortable if you're laying on a couch or something like that. Well, this thing, the slider, totally addresses that. The keyboard serves as an excellent stand. You couldn't really ask for a better stand. And plus, you get a full physical keyboard. Now, the keyboard itself isn't as good as what you get with the Transformer. The major issue is you've got this lip that kind of goes around the outer perimeter of the keyboard, and occasionally, your thumb will hit that instead of the space bar. The keys are pretty small, and the issue with the key size is, just like with any small keyboard, if you've got bigger fingers, touch typing really, really fast, you're bound to make mistakes. But all of that being said, it's still better than the kind of standard tablet virtual keyboard experience. I'm very, very pleased with the iPad slider. I think if you want a tablet and you are similar to me in that you love browsing the web and reading emails, but you hate that you kind of have to get up, go back to your computer to actually type anything, the iPad slider is the perfect way to address that. Now, obviously, the trade-offs are this is a bigger device. It weighs nearly a pound, and it's bulkier than the Galaxy Tab or iPad 2. But that being said, it's not quite as bulky as the Transformer Plus dock. You only get a single battery in the ePad slider. That was, part of the trade-off. That single battery, it's 25 watt hours. Now, unfortunately, because of the USB keyboard that's wired into the device, you get worse battery life than the standard ePad Transformer. Battery life is still, you should still expect 7 to 9 hours on a single charge, so definitely a lot better than a run-of-the-mill notebook, but not as good as, say, the 15 hours you'd get with the ePad Transformer Plus dock. In terms of performance and functionality, this thing's near identical to the Transformer. It's got the same NVIDIA Tegra 2 SoC, the tablet version. So you get 2 ARM Cortex A9 cores running 80 gigahertz. There's no MPE support. You gotta wait for Kal-El for that. You've got the same ultra-low power GeForce GPU. You got a gigabyte of LPDDR2 on board, and it's currently only available in 16 or 32 gig versions with Wi-Fi only as the connectivity option. Now you get tons of ports around the device. You've got USB 2, and you also have micro SD as well as a mini HDMI out. In terms of switches on the device, there's a standard power switch as well as volume up and on down. The unique switch that's on this thing is you actually get a reset button. Now I'm pretty sure ASUS is getting a lot of flack for this, but to be honest, look, I've had hard locks on both iOS and Android, and a reset button rather than doing some sort of home power combination or anything like that is welcome in my opinion. Look, these devices are computers and they're going to crash like computers. So a reset button obviously comes from ASUS's lineage as a PC manufacturer, but in my opinion, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad to see that it's there. It's also recessed, so you're not going to accidentally hit it. And that kind of takes care of the ePad slider hardware itself. It's priced at $469, and that's really my biggest complaint about it. I would like to see this down at $399, perhaps driving the ePad itself down even further. I think going head-to-head or near head-to-head with the iPad 2's $500 mark for a Honeycomb tablet, I think that's a mistake. I would like to see all prices come down and almost have the tablet space mirror what we see, and I know this isn't going to be very popular with the OEMs, but mirror what we see in the notebook space where, you can pay a bit more to kind of get an all-aluminum Mac, but, if you want something else with similar capabilities, you get a decent amount of savings and end up with a Honeycomb tablet. Now, it remains to be seen what the right price points for all of this is going to be. And obviously, once Windows 8 comes out, a lot of folks are viewing that as the ideal tablet platform. So a lot will change over the next year and a half. But that's one of my major issues with it. The other thing is, obviously, I'd like to see the slider with a bit more horsepower. The problem of having that keyboard there, it's so convenient, but it makes you want to do more with the tablet. And you quickly run into performance limitations of, a dual-core ARM A9. And, there are also the limitations of Android in general. A lot of times I just want to have 2 things on the screen at once. I want to really multitask. Because on this thing, I can actually be having an IM conversation with someone while browsing the web. Unfortunately, on Honeycomb, there's no real good way to do that. And this is one area where I feel Windows 8 might offer an interesting alternative where you can actually display in the Metro UI mode 2 applications, at the same time sharing the screen. I'm not looking for a full Windows desktop replacement here, but the ability to look at 2 things at once and interact with both, I think that's a key feature that tablets need to embrace over the next year here. So the slider I like. I wish it were a bit thinner. I wish it were a bit faster. But it's a good tablet, especially if you want additional productivity in your kind of Honeycomb life. But where do we go from here? So Kal-El, that's NVIDIA's quad-core SoC. It was originally due to appear in tablets in August, but that's really NVIDIA's kind of speed of light prediction. They do this a lot where they say, this is the absolute fastest we could bring a product to market. Typically that doesn't always work out, or that doesn't typically work out. And thus we find ourselves in the situation we're in today where the first Kal-El tablets are looking like they'll hit the market in November. Now, November isn't that far away, and thus my recommendation for anyone buying a new tablet, even iOS or iPad tablets at this point, is to wait. If you look at the iPad, it's clear the iPad 3 is going to be I'd say Q1, Q2 at the latest release. And if you're buying a Honeycomb tablet, obviously Kal-El tablets are going to arrive at or above the current price points. And we're going to see the first ones in November, likely from the same partners that have supported NVIDIA throughout the Honeycomb generation and the Tegra 2 generation. So what's that going to bring? Obviously, that'll address some of the performance issues. The cores are going to be clocked a bit higher. You get 4 cores versus 2. You get MPE support, so any code that, or any apps that use Neon, ARM SIMD instruction set, those will now be able to exploit Neon performance on Kal-El, whereas they couldn't on Tegra 2. The GPU is supposed to be significantly faster, and that'll help with UI performance a bit, but as well, I'm hoping that we'll see some improvements on the Android software stack as well to address that. And that's the biggest issue, right? If you're buying a tablet today, if you don't have to have one right now, you're better off waiting. These tablets tablets and smartphones are on kind of a super Moore's law curve, where every 12 months you get significant improvements in performance, battery life, and overall feature set. So it never makes sense to buy things that are at the outside part of or the outgoing part of their lifespan. And in this case, Tegra 2 clearly is. So if you can wait for Kal-El, and obviously next year, we'll get Qualcomm's Crate, which is supposed to improve performance even further, especially on the CPU side. And obviously, it just like it does on the PC side, it doesn't hurt to wait. It definitely doesn't hurt to wait on the tablet or smartphone side. If you have to buy today, the slider is a good option. If you're a tablet user that still needs to do a lot of typing when you're on your tablet, or at least some of the time when you're on your tablet. Otherwise, wait, you'll get Kal-El at least. And next year should be very, very interesting for the smartphone and tablet space in general with all the new SoCs coming out. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful to you. My name is Anand Shimpi of AnandTech.com.